Growing plants is getting harder, more expensive, more complex, increasingly more difficult. I'm Chad Masura, CEO and founder of Rosy, and this is How We Grow. All right, great. Welcome to the How We Grow podcast. I'm joined today by Tomas and John from WonderChar, and they're working on bringing a really special type of biochar to the market here as a consistent, practical input for growers and horticultural operations. I'm particularly excited for this conversation because we've been a customer of their pecan shell biochar. We love it here at Rosy. We've seen wonderful effects by incorporating it into our mixes. And I'm excited to have you both on the show. Welcome.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that great introduction. We're very thankful for the opportunity to demonstrate to you what we believe would be the great value of our unique pecan shell biochar to soils across the country.
Great. Yeah, so let's dive into it. I think, I would love to hear from both of you how you actually define the word biochar. I think people hear biochar everywhere. It can mean a lot of different things. And so, just to kind of kick this off, like in plain English, what is biochar and, why should growers care about this input?
Well, excellent. Well, it's really in the name. It's the two key parts. It's the bio part, which I think a lot of folks miss. So it is from an organic, recycled material. I think there comes into some question if you are utilizing material that has to be harvested and extracted just for that purpose, whether you're going into the bio. You're still biological, but the question is, are you getting all of the connotations behind that word, biological, organic, recycled, and really having an alternative to a coal-based or petroleum-based or, an extracted material, something that had to be chopped down or harvested just to make biochar? That goes into a question of bio. And the char part, of course, is something that's been heated without air at an elevated temperature. We produce ours at 650 degrees Celsius, and that's where you get some variation. Many things that call themselves biochar are, step one, made from extracted material that's not truly organic and not truly recycled, and step two are not made at elevated temperatures producing a true char. Rather, they're what's called torrefied or simply heated or dried, and they're a waste material, sometimes even from a combustion process, like from a power plant where material's being burnt. What you're really dealing with then is something called wood ash or an ash material or carbonaceous ash. So to distinguish true biochar from a coal-based, petroleum-based product or wood ash, it's an organic material that's recycled, that's been heated without air under a high temperature to produce a porous, high-quality, high-purity carbon sponge. And that's really where all the benefit comes in, having a pure, high-integrity carbon sponge to help build both aeration, nutrient holding capacity, and health back into a soil.
Great. Yeah. And so if I'm a grower, why should I care about this input? Why is it important to me and my operation and my plant health and all of that good stuff?
It's so important. And to understand that you just have to go back to basics. As growers, we all understand that topsoil and a healthy, fertile layer of a soil is the key to it being able to grow anything. So you think about that as we utilize a soil or as you use a soil at all, you wear away and you extract from that soil its health, its ability to hold nutrients. So soil isn't just dirt, isn't just sand, isn't just some material out there you can put something on. If you wanted to do that, you could have gravel. Can you grow something in gravel alone? Of course not. But to have that topsoil, that dark, rich carbon material in dirt to make it true fertile soil, and if you care about that and being able to grow something from it, that's why you need to think about biochar. Adding it to soils builds back in that healthy topsoil that we've extracted away so much and transforms it from mere dirt into true soil.
Great. And so let's back up a little bit. Like, tell me the WonderChar story. What problem made you want to go build this company, and what has the journey been like so far?
Well, excellent. I owe a lot of inspiration to my partner and good friend Tomas Zukowski here. I was working for decades in the chemical manufacturing industry, manufacturing agricultural inputs from coal and petroleum-based products. So I saw that side of the business very well in the R&D departments and production, and I saw that they were leaning so hard on synthetics. Everything was synthetic, and having to input so much energy, so much waste into synthetically propping up fertility of soils in the short term. And what I saw, but I never really crystallized in my mind, is that there were so many organic alternatives out there. And then, in 2020, 2021, before then as well, in 2018, 2019, I started working over in Europe, in Germany, and in Poland with Tomas. And I saw through conversations with him how they were really a step ahead. The Europeans were a step ahead in considering and utilizing so much of valuable, precious organic feedstock that was available to maintain and rebuild their soils. And I thought to myself, they have this over here, and they are utilizing so many feedstocks, mostly from wood and from waste agricultural products. A conversation with Tomas and his inspiration focused us on, okay, what can we do in the USA? And on top of that, my background was actually in agriculture. I grew up on a farm down the street from a pecan shelling facility. And I picked pecans with my grandfather, picked them off the grounds, and had this memory of giant mounds of pecan shells sitting around rotting, attracting insects and bugs, and the farmers in the pecan orchards not knowing what to do with them, and then burning them, pouring gasoline on them and burning them in huge piles just to get rid of them. And it always struck me as such a waste, because I knew if you even use the raw shells to amend your soils, you get tremendous benefit. So those two inspirations, working with Tomas in Europe and his knowledge and his experience with their utilization of these sort of resources, and my experience with pecans and what a tremendous resource, natural, domestic, 100% recycled and organic, that we have right in our backyard, but we were wasting. Those two inspirations back in 2018, 2019, 2020 really inspired us and got us moving in the direction of WonderChar, producing 100% recycled, organic pecan shell biochar in North America entirely.
Yeah. And I'm just curious, is the pecan industry still burning shells? Is that still happening in mass?
Yes.
Or like what if it's not being pyrolyzed, what is happening? I'm sure it's regional dependent, but like what is happening to those shells now, and are there any other use cases for them?
It's often burned. I think that's in most cases, but sometimes when the pecan shellers, for example, they don't have the possibility to utilize this as fuel for other companies, they're really thinking about digging a hole and putting it into a hole.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is also a question of costs for the pecan shellers, getting rid of materials. Sometimes they have to pay for utilizing for them for the useless shells in this case.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's exactly that. We produce, now we're heading towards, by the middle of this year, 2,000 metric tons of pecan shell biochar every year. But there are 10s and 20s and more. There are so many metric tons of pecan shell out there that folks don't think about, because they're tucked away, they're in huge mounds, they're dug in trenches, they're burned off. But there is a tremendous amount of pecan shell still out there, and what they are mostly doing, 90% and more, is, just as Tomas said, burning it off or letting it rot, because of course it's a very nutrient-rich material, and so it decomposes quite rapidly. It makes a bit of a mess. There are a few outfits in Georgia that do utilize it as a energy source. They burn it off. But because of the nature of pecan shell, if you don't have a system that's optimized for it, that's relatively difficult to do. And I really do believe, and our data has indicated, that we have found the best end use for pecan shells.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you have this sort of aha moment, and then what? I mean, tell me about the kind of early days at the company. Tell me about how you started to scale things up. What were some of the, big wins and big challenges and all of that along, the road to, now producing 2,000 tons a year?
Excellent. Yeah, it was very challenging at first. There was no doubt about it. Well, we started off with the idea, and we're entirely bootstrapped. We're entirely self-funded. We don't have a big venture capital firm behind us. We didn't come in with a grand corporate vision that imposed restrictions on us. So on one hand, we were free to do what the best practices for the farmers and for the char dictated, but also we had to do it all on our own. So we started off, as you'd expect, small scale, our own backyard, working with the shells, really learning everything beyond what casual interaction with the shells could tell you, their composition, their profile, what different shellers, what they produced, and the nature of the pecans themselves. Luckily, I had a pretty strong background in that, but there's a lot to learn about the shells. So we started off with, the usual stuff, small, self-made furnaces, backyard work, reaching out and seeing who was doing what where. And what we really found is that the biochar market, which, is a semi-mature market, it's heading towards maturity, was mainly focused on wood and was using practices that in some cases were wasteful, but really not suited to high purity. They had to use had to produce a lot of ash, had to use a lot of water to tamp down the material so it wouldn't burn. And we found that with such a rich feedstock like pecan shell, it wasn't suitable at all. So we were starting from zero and developing a methodology that was new to pecan shell. But we found partners, manufacturing partners, who had the same vision as us, and we shared with them our idea, and we began building out our partnership manufacturing facilities in northern Mexico and in Texas and in Arkansas, our processing facilities. So we found through our deep relationships in the industry, partners who we could share our vision with, and were a great help along the way. So the first big milestone, there are a number of biochar producers who never get off the ground as far as making beyond one bulk bag. They'll make one bulk bag of material, or they'll make a small amount, and they'll struggle with viability. Our big milestone was our first full truckload to a major fertilizer manufacturing company that was using it in a way to develop and build in natural, organic, controlled release functionality into their fertilizer to better utilize it much more efficiently. So they believed in our material. They've seen what you saw where, okay, this has this natural potential. You don't have to do an encapsulation or a coating. You mix it with the fertilizer and it does its job. And it was a struggle getting it together and streamlining our manufacturing process to produce that first truckload. But when that truckload went out the door and we saw those crisp, beautiful, carbonized pecan shells get on the road and head down to our first customer, and they gave us the feedback, we really like this stuff. It works well. It's so much different from wood-based biochar. That was a huge milestone for us, that first truckload, because that was always our vision, scale. Biochar is great, and there's a lot to be said about localized small-scale biochar, but the issue with that is you'll always have so much variation in quality, and you won't get the performance impact. You won't get the real value of it. We were always committed to the vision of making this volume, high quality, uniform pecan shell biochar. And that first truckload was a huge win for us.
I agree with John there, but I think maybe the vision that we had is different probably to many other potential biochar suppliers. So main goal was to produce high quality biochar that really makes it different compared to the competition, because producing your first truckload of biochar with the moisture content of 50% and a lot of waste and ash inside of it, that's a big issue. But having the right raw material quality, the right equipment to process the raw material into the right quality of biochar, and then meeting the customer requirements of our specific customers, but a bit above the standard farmer that puts it just into the dirt or into the soil. I think this was what differentiates, because there are other biochar suppliers in the market that produce only on scale. They don't take care too much about the quality, because they know they can clinch it with water, and that's fine, and their customers don't look on that. So our vision was more go into the specialty, high requirements applications and customers. I think that's where we are progressing step by step and getting more and more successful.
Yes, and moving beyond that, beyond the first truckload, once you have something and you have something that you can say, I can make this with consistency, we hit the road. We hit the conferences, we went out there and displayed our material, and we met with, honestly, a lot of skepticism at first, because people were asking and they were saying, okay, maybe I've heard of biochar, but pecan shell biochar, what's that? Why would it be made of pecan shells? And so we went through the entire long but necessary process of education and got samples out there, free samples. Whoever would ask, anyone who I could convince to even look our way, I sent a free sample. I've sent so many bottles and baggies and going to conferences, sort of with like a hobo with a knapsack over my shoulder with free samples handing out, biochar. So that was a big step in the process. And seeing that within the last 2 years, the traction take hold, the tires grip the road, and they'll start to move forward, and folks come to us and say, hey, I've heard about pecan shell biochar, and this farmer or that soil manufacturer has tried it, they love it, tell me more. That's a big milestone as well. And the traction starting and education starting and people recognizing the differentiation that not all biochars are alike, and that many of the missteps that have happened in the biochar industry have occurred because people were using poor quality biochar that wasn't tailored for their application. And then the final, I'd say, big milestone for us, besides the first truckload, getting recognition in the market, and then finally was getting out there with some great universities and having real hard science demonstrations of the benefits of utilizing biochar in conjunction with soils and fertilizers. I'd really love to thank the teams at Texas A&M University for their recent study demonstrating how much, in particular, our biochar can help plant survivability, plant yield, and plant growth. And getting that hard science, moving beyond just anecdotes or feelings into a real demonstration that uniquely pecan shell biochar can have these benefits, big benefits to plants that maybe wouldn't be intuitive at first, was a huge milestone for us. So the 2025 Texas A&M study on our biochar was a tremendous milestone for us, where I feel we've turned a new page and have a real pathway forward.
Yeah, so tell me more about that. I mean, what did those studies look like? What were they looking for? What were the kind of main outcomes of some of that research? Like, yeah, go a little bit deeper on that.
Excellent. Texas A&M University and some great folks that we've been working with them a while, including Dr. Metdingra and Dr. Paul there at their facilities in Texas. What they wanted to demonstrate is comparing the positive impacts of all pecan shell biochar versus utilizing simple compost and utilizing untreated soil in conjunction with Miracle-Gro fertilizer. And that was the key thing. They were demonstrating with a controlled baseline of application of a very mainstream fertilizer. Is there still benefit from using biochar?
And was it in ground? Was it containers?
It was in ground.
Were the plants? Okay.
It was a set of plots, solid number of replicates, all in the same area, same conditions, everything controlled with a flowering plant type in which there was a disposition of the same number of plants. The plots were randomized as far as their location. Each controlled plot contained a treatment either of control, no treatment, compost, or our pecan shell biochar. And then all the conditions, including water application.
Just as a basic top dress. Okay.
With some very simple incorporation of the soil. We're not talking about drills or deep dredging or deep mixing. We're talking about simple hand mixing into the soil to replicate what could be done in very simple and basic farming conditions. So to really give you a robust test on what may occur in real life in someone's home garden. So with that, what was seen with the standardized application of water and Miracle-Gro is a tremendous boost in plant survivability. I mean, we're talking doubling up on the number of flowering plants that were planted and survived throughout the growing season. The root mass of the plants increased dramatically, and the flowering presentation, the aesthetics, and the health of the plants themselves increased dramatically. I mean, it was a clear indication that changing this one factor, adding WonderChar, pecan char, biochar, or not adding it
in conjunction with a regular FERT program or a compost top dress, effectively. Okay.
Exactly. A critical point, of course, all the other test replication plots also had the application of the Miracle-Gro fertilizer and irrigation. So with that, with the same soils in the same area of southern Texas, you had a demonstration that controlling all parameters, you could either have a soil in which it's very difficult to grow, a basic flowering plant, or you could have a soil where you could have really beautiful, tremendous growth of flowering plants.
And has this published? Can we see it yet, or is it coming out soon? Or
it's not. We have the finished copy, but it hasn't yet been circulated in their university publications yet. We'll keep you posted when it comes out.
Great.
But I'm happy to share it with anyone. Yes, I have the finished article from the professor. I'm very happy to share it with anyone who asks, including yourself.
Great. And so I know we talked a lot about consistency of feedstock, ash content, carbon content, but, how do we translate this to the average grower? As they're thinking about, one, incorporating biochar, and then, two, sort of what type of biochar and how to judge the quality of that char. Like, what are some of the things you recommend that they look for, or what are some of the gotchas? Like, how do we translate this into a growing environment?
Excellent. It's very straightforward. And of course, some in-use farmers are familiar with things like peat moss, or other substrates, other amendments that they can use. It comes down to the basic fact of with biochar, you're adding the life of soil, you're adding carbon back in. And carbon porous, persistent carbon that stays in the soil and does its job. That's what really makes a soil hold water and hold nutrients. So what you're really doing when you're getting biochar adding into soil, different from dissolvable carbons, soluble carbons, different from fertilizers, different from peat, is you're adding in a persistent carbon that increases dramatically the holding capacity of your soil for all the things that plants need to grow. So that's step one, thinking about why am I adding biochar? What's it doing for my soil? And thinking about that builds on the next point very directly. Okay, if its job is to provide carbon and provide porosity that sticks around, then you want a biochar that does those three things the best. And so what do you not want to get into a biochar? You don't want a biochar that has other things other than carbon, like ash content or volatile oils, or that's been burnt up, or that's very, very soft and friable that'll break down, and all the pores, the little sponge inside isn't going to collapse and break down into a solid chunk. So you want a high quality, well-made, strong biochar particle made from something that is a nutritive material, like a nutshell whose purpose is to facilitate the growth of the tree. When you go to a biochar supply and you ask them, what's it made of? Where is it from? If they tell you, oh, it comes from the burn off of a power plant, or it comes from a process where there's this waste material and it goes through the different steps and it comes from different places, we're not really sure, we can't track where it comes from, it starts to raise questions upon consistency. Am I, from their process, producing a pure, strong, high porosity, sustainable carbon that will have a positive impact on the environment and that will persist in my soils and provide that critical function of consistently and sustainably absorbing and releasing moisture and nutrients.
And do some of these, so it sounds like you recommend, obviously, know your feedstock, know the production process, know the temps, but do some of these show up in lab results? Like, I think that's where a lot of people start is, show me the labs basically, and what do you recommend they look for in that information?
Definitely. Look, the very first one is ash content. Look at ash content. Mm-hmm. We maintain a 4 or 5% ash content. And if you want to get more technical, it's mostly calcium based, which calcium is good for the soil. Look at the ash content and look for the IBI Control Labs analysis. Look down and make sure there are no heavy metals, nothing like chromium or lead or anything in there that would then, now you're depositing that into your soils, into your gardens. Mm-hmm. So look at ash content. Look for something below 10%. Definitely. After that, look at the moisture content. If you're looking there and you see, okay, they have to add 30, 40, 50, 60% moisture, especially if they're above 40% moisture, that means they're really having to dilute their biochar to keep it probably from reacting or breaking down. So look at the ash content first, then the moisture content, and then you'll see something called surface area. Look for your surface area. Many of these burnt or collapsed biochars are very low in surface area, below 100. There's a value there. If you're looking for something, look for something that's above 100 in the surface area. And beyond that, you take a next step in evaluation that's very straightforward, and I think that we can all relate to. Hold it in your hand. Have a look at the biochar just intuitively and say to yourself, okay, does this all look like it's all the same material? Is it relatively homogeneous in size and in consistency? Does it feel oily or weak? When I roll it around in my fingers, does it look like it's going to break into 1,000 pieces or blow away in the wind? Use some of your intuitive senses that we've inherited from our understanding of the land. Just like when you pick up soil, you see the soil, okay, is it good consistency? Can it hold moisture? Is there room in it for more nutrients? In the same way, look at the biochar, make sure it doesn't seem dirty or very mishmash of different materials. Is it a strong particle size? I think that's something that anyone who's interested in biochar, interested in the health of their soil, can do and should do when looking at their biochar. Ask what it's made from, make sure there's no burning involved, make sure there's no weird different kinds of feedstocks of different types that are just thrown in there. Make sure that it has low ash, below 10% I would recommend, and make sure that when you hold it in your hand, that it looks like something that you'd want to be part of your ecosystem.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
great.
Chad, so you see that John is looking very much on the qualitative perspective of biochar, but also what does it mean? What does it mean for the grower? When I buy a biochar that has 10% of ash or even more, and then 40 or 50% of moisture, this means I buy around 50% of material that has any purpose in my soil. It's just additional costs without any value to you. So you just buy only 50% of the carbon content compared to a much, much higher quality biochar. And this is, I think, what a kind of industry standard has to be, that people understand this. And very often in the past, we saw that they hear biochar, them it's the same material, they don't look on the specs, on the quality, and then they buy technically a much more expensive product because they buy less biochar in total.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one other point too that I'd like to make that I think is very important is density. Especially now, I see a lot of landscapers, a lot of bulk gardeners, a lot of people who are buying at scale, even folks who buy a bag at the market, they buy a volume. And they don't ask any further questions. They say, okay, I'm buying a cubic yard, and it's this many dollars, and therefore that's the price, and I'm buying my biochar in cubic yards or cubic feet. And that is such a mistake, because when you think about it, you're not trying to buy volume, because if you wanted to buy air, you could buy nothing and put that in your soil. You could buy, once again, a loose material. You could buy packing peanuts and put it into your soil if you just wanted to buy volume and put it in your soil. The key thing is look at the density and considering buy it by its purity, buy it by its weight, because that's what you're adding to your soil. When I see these large-scale landscapers buying it by volume, they're going to look for inherently low-grade biochar that is splintery and disordered in particle size and has very little actual material in it that can hold a lot of space but not provide you the carbon and the porosity and the beneficial characteristics and the retention of nutrients that you really need. So I'd say move beyond buying off of density, buy off of weight, buy off of purity.
Yeah. And how do you think about particle size in this equation?
Oh, excellent.
Because I know you offer a number of different sizes. Like, how do you make those recommendations? How do you help people think through the trade-offs between larger and smaller chunks of char?
Excellent. Well, what I've seen, unfortunately, in the past in the industry is a lot of producers, they make one type or two types of biochars, and they try to make that shoe fit for everybody. They say, this is what we make, so this is the best type. We've taken a different approach and said, we're going to tailor the particle size to what your needs are, and therefore we're going to have to understand your needs. So we're one of the few producers who can make anything up from a 5 millimeter nice clean chip, very low in dust, all the way down to a micronized powder, even as low as 5 microns or below. So we can make whatever size you need, and what determines the size you need. If you want to make a nice, large, loose soil for growing orchids or other flowering plants, then the larger particle sizes are best. If you want to make something that blends very well with, a 100 or 200 SNG fertilizer, then we make a 100 or 200 SNG particle size biochar. Once again, low dust, very consistent size. If you need to mix with a seed coating, or with a liquid application, that's where our micronized powders come in. So we'll make the right biochar do the right job for you.
Yeah, great. So where do you recommend growers start? If they're curious about char, where are you seeing some of the most obvious applications or the most successful initial applications? Is it replacing a specific amendment? Is it more in top dress in ground? Like where are you most excited right now about where growers are being successful?
Excellent. Well, the best place to start is adding it to your existing toolkit with a mix of other additives. For example, replacing peat moss. That's a great step because you'll get much more benefit with biochar. Or adding it in conjunction if you already have a plan to add an amendment or, for example, lime or other materials with fertilizer. We emphasize that biochar itself is not a fertilizer, rather it's a fertilizer and fertility booster. So we rarely recommend adding into the soil alone, rather add it in conjunction with your nutrient additives and other amendments as a composite product to get the best performance. As we saw in the Texas A&M study, you can have a tremendous gain in plant survivability, plant health, and plant yield. So that's what we say. Go out there if you're, for example, you're a gardener and you're already adding in your fertilizer, make sure you add it in conjunction with our biochar, and then you'll see a tremendous increase in the performance you get out of it.
Yeah, great. And then what about in the trialing phase? So, let's say I'm a grower. I'm excited about biochar. I want to start. I want to follow your recommendation and amend it with what I'm doing right now. Where do you see initial trials go well, or where do you see things kind of go off the rails, and how do you advise growers to avoid some of those potholes?
Well, the biggest thing we want to do, we believe in the value that our biochar brings, and so we want to make sure that your trials allows you to see that value. that value. So the key thing is to make sure you separate out the areas that you apply biochar to and keep an eye on them to differentiate the benefit of that area that you've applied biochar to the areas that you haven't. Therefore, you can make a clear decision on what the value of that biochar is to you. And make sure you control your parameters. So if you're applying, let's say something very straightforward, you're going to do in-furrow application to row crop growth, and you want to determine, okay, what's the benefit that I'm growing corn, for example, another row crop. Make sure that you clearly delineate where you're applying in furrow the biochar, and that you keep all the applications of your other inputs relatively similar across there, so you can really see, okay, I've added this much biochar, this is the benefit it gave me, this is the value it's added. A key thing, too, is not only can biochar increase the performance of existing fertilizer, your application rates, it can allow you to decrease your application rates of fertilizer and irrigation and save costs tremendously. As we can see with recent events in the news, sadly, fertilizer costs have had a tremendous tremendous spike. So biochar is a critical tool that when conducting a trial, don't just trial at the same rates of fertilizer application as your control plot. Rather, also trial with reduced fertilizer applications, as much as reductions of 50% could net a tremendous cost savings and more than pay for the biochar by your ability to maintain the same yields, the same plant growth, the same plant health with a significant reduction in application of fertilizer.
Yeah, great. And then what are some of the big kind of challenges or blockers that you're seeing, whether in your business or in the kind of industry at large, that are slowing down biochar adoption today?
Oh, sure. There are three big ones. Number one, folks confusing low-quality biochar with high-quality biochar and having this idea that all biochar is the same. And so that lack of differentiation means folks will smear the good biochar with the bad biochar results and be very hesitant to uptake or try it because they've said, oh, I tried this very poor quality, burnt-out biochar, and therefore I'm done with the whole idea. So that's number one of the big impediments. The number two is overpromising, which we really want to shy away from. I want to be clear. Biochar is not a wonder weapon. It's not a silver bullet. People promise, oh, you just sprinkle a little whisper of biochar on your plot, on your garden, and everything will grow twice the size, 3 times the size, 4 times the size. I've heard it. I've heard it before. Biochar is a very useful tool as part of your overall toolkit. It is worth the cost. It is extremely valuable, even in these, especially in these times of increased fertilizer costs, but it's not a silver bullet. So low quality biochar is number one, and overpromising of performance is number two as far as our impediments. The last one really is just a resistance to change and a hesitancy in a very challenging economic climate to invest in new technologies in general. And this goes across the board. This isn't just with biochar. This is with so many other technologies that have tremendous promise, but in a difficult market where one misstep can cause some serious issues, folks are hesitant to say, well, is this just a filler material? Will I really get the benefits? Is it, I'm just not in a mood to try anything new or to invest in anything new if it's not worth the money immediately. The way we get around all three of these is by demonstrating our value. It comes across the entire range of issues. We go out there first and say, hey, of course, free samples, free trial support, demonstration with universities. We reveal our quality up front and are transparent in how we produce our material and what it's made of. It's made of the same thing all the time. So we overcome these issues by being transparent, by supporting trials, by demonstrating to people that this is not just a filler material, but it's something that really will pay for itself and then some.
Yeah, great.
So John, this is probably like the market perspective from the customer side. I think one important look we have to take on is the supply chain, having a reliable partner for your raw material supply and being close to it, because every mile you're more away, the more your raw material costs increase for the transportation. So the closer you are, the more important also you're relying on them. Without him, your business model will not work. So this is very important, having your raw material supplier long-term contract with him, and that he only supplies you with his total quantity if you require this for your customers.
Yeah, great. And then as you're thinking about kind of the industry at large and, where you're seeing some of the trends going over the next couple of years, what are you guys excited about? Like, what do you see coming down the pipeline?
Oh, I'm super excited about the real incorporation of biochar into composite fertilizer and soil products. I think that we've broken that initial stage where people are trying out the question, does it work, has been answered. Yes, it obviously does, if you have good quality biochar that's made well. So we figured out that, yes, like anything else, quality matters and there's differentiation. So now we can move beyond that. Having these composite products where we combined, replace old amendments that have poorer function with biochar that has better function, and saying, okay, now we understand porosity is the real gear that turns this whole thing, that makes it work. Mixing the right composites and incorporating it not just into specialty products, but in composite fertilizers, soils, growing medias across the board. I think we're going to see such a tremendous increase in efficiency of use of our nutrients and such a huge boost to our natural facility. It'll be the same thing as we moved away to more efficient engines. Now we have more efficient combustion engines, and we've got miles per gallons that go from 5 miles per gallon to 30. I think we're going to see a similar increase, and when we properly utilize biochar, we're going to get a miles per gallon out of our nutrients that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, great. I love it. I couldn't agree more. Okay, cool. Well, anything I didn't cover? Any other questions I didn't ask? Anything else you wanted to share with the audience before we wrap here?
Well, I just want to say, of course, that we have more information on our website at www.wonderchar.com. And please, we're very transparent. You can reach out to me personally. I'm very accessible always to any of our customers. And if you have questions or problems, reach out to us. We have a great team, not just myself and Tomas, but we have a team supporting us. But we'll get in there. We're not afraid to show you exactly how everything works, answer all your questions, and walk you through the process and support you while you try it. If you thought about trying it, reach out. We'll get you samples, get you support. Never regret missing this opportunity to utilize a great new tool.
Great. All right, John, Tomas, thanks so much for coming on today. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You as well.
Chad, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Bye.